Hello everyone, we are approaching the end of 2025, and as such, I wanted to make a video reflecting on the year, reflecting on LEGO Star Wars as a whole in 2025, the good and the bad. So in this video, I'll be going over 6 things I really loved that LEGO did in 2025, and 6 things I didn't like. So let's get started. I'm going to alternate so that way we're not too negative or too positive. We'll just go back and forth here. Starting though with some positives. The plastic pauldrons they released this year for the 327th were great. I really loved those. Even though there's a lot of gripes with clones right now, I think they're making some good moves in some good directions, especially with these plastic pauldrons. Having nothing there is not an option, but those big cloth pieces over the arms weren't really working either. Plus the cloth piece that Echo had in that set didn't really work. It didn't fold down, so it just kind of sat there. If you have the figure and had it in person, you definitely know what I'm talking about. And I think they realized that, and they made a huge improvement with the plastic pauldrons. They just look so much better. They keep their shape, they're more clean, the colors pop, they're not going to get folded over or messed up. If I had one teensy complaint, I do wish they would have carried the plastic over the front of the torso of the minifigure. Not enough so that it impeded the arm movement like it did on the old one, but just a little bit right where the printing is underneath their neck. If they could have carried that little plastic piece all across there, then to the side, I think it would have been perfect. Still, nonetheless, I do like what we have. And it's definitely a step in the right direction considering the state of clones in LEGO Star Wars right now. Moving to the negative side of things, the first thing, the big one, pricing. I don't think anyone will argue with me on this. In general, LEGO this year was pretty bad. There was a lot of sets coming out that didn't feel justified for their price at all. Some of the biggest ones, like the Turbo Tank, are very well known, and the community was actually quite vocal about, to the point LEGO has to have heard it and has to be thinking about it. Then there's even sets like the $1,000 UCS Death Star, which might not be too overpriced, but it is at a price that I don't think anybody really cares for, and it's just too much for a LEGO set. A lot of this pricing issue also comes from too much downsizing. LEGO has been downsizing a lot of their builds recently, but yet the prices haven't been changing, so it just feels like we're getting less for our money. If the prices and the sizes stayed similar enough, then it wouldn't be quite as big of a deal, but seeing prices go up and sizes of sets go down is a really bad look. While we're on this topic of pricing, I also need to mention the May 4th event. About halfway through the May 4th event, after a lot of people already put in their initial orders, LEGO put a bunch of more sets on sale. A lot of really good deals that came out on that second half, trying to get people to order a second time, which is just really slimy and a really bad practice. Alright, that was a little unrelated to pricing, but I felt it fit enough and I really wanted to mention it. Back to the positives, there was a great amount of Clone Wars sets. And I mean real sets, not just battle pack builds. There have been a number of battle packs over the last few years pertaining to the prequels, Clone Wars, however you want to say it. But there haven't been a ton of actual sets, bigger sets like the Turbo Tank, the V-19 Torrent, Ahsoka's Jedi Interceptor. Sets like that have been missing, and they finally made a comeback this year. I was very thankful for that. It kind of felt like 2008 again this year. There was a lot of classic Clone Wars inspired sets that came out. Really cool to see, especially with how the community has come around to these sets. Now getting to the bad, I'm actually going to turn that one kind of on its head. There was a lot of prequel sets. Maybe too many. For just 1 year, I think it's okay, but we need to be on the watch. As much as I love prequels, I don't want only prequel sets every single year. They heavily favored them this year, and that's okay if it's just this year, but it's something I think we need to be on the watch for. There's been a lot more prequel fans on the rise, and I think LEGO noticed that. Hopefully they don't wash out all the original trilogy stuff just for Clone Wars, but we'll have to see how that gets played out. Back to some positives, microfighters are still continuing in a great direction. Last year we got Captain Rex's Y-Wing, which was a great microfighter, probably the best of all time. I don't think LEGO's really been optimizing their microfighter line to what they could have been. A long time there, they were kind of just putting out random builds with random minifigures, not necessarily ones that you really care about or are too rare. However, they've changed that now. They're going after more niche figures that aren't necessarily always going to appear in sets. Last year with Rex and now Plo Koon. Not to mention it makes the builds that much more interesting because Plo Koon Starfighter is really cool. It works really well on the scale as well. Not that microfighters are some marvel to look at, but it's a fun little build. Of course, Plo Koon is the big name here and the one you're going to buy the set for. It's a great figure. That new head mold is astounding. If I had to give a big negative about the set, it's that the Astromech head is included, but not the rest of the body, which just seems really cheap and lazy to me, going back to some of those pricing issues we've been talking about earlier. But nonetheless, sticking on the positive side, this microfighter is really great and they're continuing in a really good direction. My next negative is that we got a turbo tank instead of a UTAT. What's that about? I mean, normally that wouldn't surprise me, but with the minifigure lineup, I'm just in awe that we didn't get a UTAT. I 100% believe LEGO is planning to do a UTAT and then changed it last minute. That's why everything about it screams UTAT except the build. That would explain everything, including the poor build quality. They had to do a switch up and make a turbo tank in half the time. As if you're not aware, this turbo tank is actually not very stable at all. Playing around with it, picking it up, it actually has a tendency to come apart, which is not something LEGO is known for. I'm still really confused as to why they didn't do a UTAT. I'm sure it would have sold plenty well. I guess they just weren't that comfortable enough yet to do something that niche. Another thing LEGO did right in 2025 was giving us named clone pilots. Honestly, clone pilots at all, seeing them back was great, but the fact that we got named ones was even better. The ARC 170 had 3 clone pilots in it, all different color schemes with different markings. Then there's even the Phase 1 clone pilot in the V19 Torrent. It's just so cool to see these pilots finally get some recognition, and in the Phase 1's case, actually a molded helmet that's correct and accurate. Moves like this make me very hopeful that we're going to get more and more pilots and named secondary characters from shows and movies that maybe aren't as well known, but kind of background characters. And there's a lot to be hopeful for there moving forward. One of my least favorite things about LEGO in 2025 is their inconsistency with their arm printing. This also goes for dual molded legs, leg printing, any sort of those extra details with minifigures that we're not maybe used to, but we're starting to see more and more, or at least we should be seeing more and more. For some reason, they're sometimes here on minifigures and they're sometimes not. There isn't really rhyme or reason for when these minifigures get these extra details. For example, you have little small gift with purchases from May 4th that have clone cadets that have arm printing, dual molded legs, and look terrific. But then there's minifigures from the $1,000 UCS Death Star that don't even have basic leg printing. It's just extremely peculiar to me and bewildering. I wish there was just some sort of consistency with where and how these extra detailed minifigures would appear. As oddly enough, it seems like they appear more in sets that are cheaper than the more expensive ones, which just don't seem right at all. That is something LEGO definitely needs to remedy in the coming years. The next positive I have is that these set compilations for this year are actually good. In many years past, we've had plenty of set compilations that just are kind of mixed bags. They don't make sense, they don't fit together, and sometimes they're just plain out bad. This year, though, they fit together a lot better, and they're of better sets. The first one is a 3-in-1 set, the Clone Wars and Mandalorian gift set. Really, it's just a big minifigure pack, which is awesome. The Mandalorian one feels a little out of touch with the other two, but it kind of works given Mandalore and the Clone Wars. Even though it's not quite the same era, I can see what they were shooting for, and I still think it works as it's just a big minifigure pack. Then you have the MTT and the 327th Battle Pack pushed together in one big set, which is a great choice. I mean, this is just an obvious one, a given. They were made to go together, and so a dual pack with both them was a great choice. And I'd love to see more sets in the future with this kind of cohesion appear in dual sets like this for a discounted rate. The next negative actually mentions the 327th Battle Pack because, unfortunately, the Battle Packs this year really missed. The Night Trooper Battle Pack is a big dud. The build is just atrocious. It looks like a 4-year-old build. Not good at all. As far as a Battle Pack goes, though, you typically don't care about the builds quite as much, so it maybe could have saved itself with the minifigures, but they're a disappointment too. Quality-wise, they're all great, but I feel like the quantity should have been shifted around. You get 2 Death Troopers, 1 Night Trooper, and another Night Trooper with a dark gray helmet. The Death Troopers definitely shouldn't have been sitting in the majority here. They're not the figure you're going to want to army build. You're going to want to army build the plain white Night Trooper. It just doesn't make sense to me. And then combine that with the worst build we've probably ever seen from LEGO Star Wars. It's a pretty gross looking battle pack. Now, like I already alluded to, the 327th isn't that great either. It's a good set on its own, but when you factor in the price of $45, it's just insane. Makes absolutely no sense and is a terrible deal. LEGO really needs to change this because battle packs were something everybody looks forward to. They're a really fun small set, but $45 is not a battle pack. On to our final positive, we have the fact that Rebuild the Galaxy is continuing. I loved this line of sets from last year and it continued this year. There was only one released, but it's a pretty cool one. The Force Burner Snowspeeder is crazy unique and stands out from any other Star Wars set. Exactly what the Rebuild the Galaxy line should be doing. Same can be said for the minifigures. An interesting bunch, but it has a really cool one in particular. Wielding some purple lightsabers and these dark robes. I just love it. I love what they do at this line. So interesting and unique minifigures, unique builds that give LEGO Star Wars kind of its own thing, away from the shows and movies of mainstream media. Alright, on to the very last thing LEGO Star Wars did wrong in 2025, and it's just the UCS Death Star. I think this was just a huge miss. I already mentioned it a little earlier in one of the picks, but first off, no LEGO set should be $1,000. That's just too much, especially for what you get here. Even if the piece count and that might kind of line up with the pricing, I don't think it matches, $1,000 worth. You can talk about price per piece or price per gram all you want, but really it's, if you look at it, is this worth $1,000? No, it's not. It's just a big diorama collection in a big circle. It's really weird for LEGO to experiment with such a big set like this, especially when they weren't willing to experiment for just that little UT-AT instead of a turbo tank. But yet for their big $1,000 UCS Death Star, they're going to go totally off the rails and create a big pancake that has some dioramas in it. It just doesn't make sense to me, and I think this is a big swing and a miss. And it's going to have a hard time shaking that poor legacy, I think, for years to come. Alright, those are my top 6 things that LEGO Star Wars did right, and then my top 6 things that LEGO Star Wars did wrong. Did I miss anything? Was there anything LEGO did good or bad in 2025 that I didn't think of or remember? What should LEGO Star Wars be doing in 2026? Lay down all your opinions in the comments below. Like and subscribe for more, and until next time, I'll see you guys later.